This is Paula Williams with ABCI, and today we are talking about marketing, advertising, branding, and sales for flight schools. Let's start with sales. And the reason we start with sales is because we want to start with the end in mind. And as you know, nothing happens until somebody sells something. Um, all of the marketing that you invest in amounts to absolutely nothing unless it improves your sales. That's how we measure return on investment for marketing. So it really comes down to the wire on whether or not you actually sold more this year than last year, given your marketing efforts. So we need to talk about sales first before we talk about marketing. Um, Most of us, when we think about sales, we think, well, if we have the best product at the lowest price, people will just automatically buy it from us. All we have to do is let them know that we have the best product at the lowest price. And that's all we need to do. We don't have to do this complicated marketing stuff. We don't have to do these multi-step programs. We don't have to do multiple emails and things like that. But sales is actually a lot harder than most people think it is. Most people really underestimate the amount of difficulty involved in making sales. And here are the reasons for that. We're already bombarded with ads. We are busy. We forget what we've seen or read unless it's repeated. There is a ton of competition for our time, attention, and money. So unless we see an ad, sometimes it's the third or fourth or 10th time that we see an advertisement or uh, come in contact with some marketing um, before we actually buy something. So first of all, let's talk about who you're really competing with. Now, if you are a flight school that educates career pilots, then you are in competition with every other career opportunity that your students have. You're not just in competition with the other flight schools on the field. You're in competition with the trade schools and universities in your area who are doing a lot of marketing. You may be in competition with entry-level jobs, which are the alternative. People may decide, well, I'll just skip career training and go straight into a job. They may decide, I should just go straight into the military rather than doing flight training. So, those are the things that you're really competing against, not necessarily the other flight schools on the field. And that's why sometimes cooperative agreements between flight schools are a good thing, and that's why we need to step up our marketing. Now, maybe you don't educate career-minded pilots. Maybe your students are recreational pilots. And if that's the case, you're competing against the local country club, you're competing against the yacht club, you're competing against really anybody who um, is a recreational opportunity that takes about the same demographics of people and about the same amount of money as flight training or as recreational flying. So, you've got scuba diving, boating, golfing, motorcycles, all kinds of crazy things. And these folks are doing a lot of marketing. In fact, Harley Davidson does such fantastic marketing that people actually get their logo tattooed on their body. There's very few folks that are doing quite that good of a job at marketing and sales. So these are the folks you're in competition with, and that's why we need to take marketing and sales very seriously. And here's what we can do about it. We can target the right buyers at the right time, and we can make sure that the marketing that we do is useful and memorable. And we can do that by telling good stories. We tell stories about the trips that we take, about the students that we help, about the careers that they have. Stories are really the very best marketing. So let's just go through a few sales statistics. I'm not going to read all of these to you, but the general idea is that most people never follow up with a prospect. And actually, I was just listening to a fellow in one of my marketing groups that went to a flight school as a potential student, signed up for his first lesson, showed up, the instructor never showed up, and the flight school never showed up or never followed up with him. They sent maybe one postcard and made one phone call, but they didn't really try to get him back after that experience. And I think a lot of of flight schools are in that same boat. Sales is kind of everybody's job, so it ends up being nobody's job. Everybody's supposed to be making sales calls and doing follow-up when they have extra time, but because it's everybody's job, nobody ends up doing it. And as a result, most of our prospects never get followed up with, or they get followed up with, once or twice, when it really takes 5 to 12 contacts. And actually, in our experience, this is actually the 5th to 12th contact, 80% of sales made on the 5th to 12th contact. That's from Jack Daly of results.com. In the aviation industry, because it is such a high trust, high dollar industry, we've found that it takes anywhere from 10 to 15 contacts that we should plan on making before statistically we're most likely to make a sale. So since you're making all of those contacts, it's really important to have those contacts all add up to something in your prospect's mind. They have to remember you and remember, oh yeah, I got a postcard from these guys last week, and now I'm getting an email from them, and then maybe here's their website. So all of those things have to have some kind of visual cue that these are the same people. Again, we're really busy. We analyze things in 15 seconds or less, especially if it's a website or an email. So having a logo, a color scheme, a set of fonts, and a set of visuals that clues people in on who we are, that really helps build that investment. So that every time you make a contact with someone, you're building credibility. I included this little image in here. Coca-Cola and Pepsi are two of the most well-known brands, and when you mix up the words with the visuals, it's interesting what your brain does, because your brain will automatically, when you see that blue sign on the left, you think Pepsi, and when you see the red one on the right, you think Coke before you even read the words. So your brain processes colors, symbols, fonts, visual clues before it actually reads. So you want to make sure that you're using a consistent set of branding each time you make a contact. Another thing you want to do is differentiate yourself from the other folks in your industry. What is it that makes you unique? And if you can come up with a great tagline or theme line for your flight school, that really differentiates, this is what is different about us, and really mean it, then that will stick in people's minds as well. And that's another one of those memory devices, and you should use it on every single one of your contacts with people, because that really helps them remember you and remember why you're the best choice. Another thing you want to do is a complete marketing system. Every one of these slides has a note in the bottom that says no random acts of marketing. That's really one of our key points for our company. That's our tagline, is that we don't participate or condone random acts of marketing. We think they're a waste of our time and your money. So we like to put together marketing systems that have a phase one, which is what most people think of as advertising, where you're getting visitors to your website, social media, you're sending out postcards, maybe you do magazine ads, you're doing email broadcasts, you're doing career fairs, radio remotes, other things like that. The first way that people come in contact with you is usually your phase one. Phase two is where that list of continuing contacts comes in. Maybe you send an email newsletter or a printed newsletter. Maybe you send greeting cards on people's birthdays or anniversaries of doing business with you. Maybe you do sales or service calls on the telephone and ask, people, so, what are your interests? What are your plans with flights, training, and how can we help you? And as a result of those multiple contacts, at some point you make a sale, and then you go into phase three, which is resales, recaptures, and referrals. So anything that you do in marketing should include all three of those phases. It happens very, very frequently that flight schools will do phase one, and then they kind of fall by the wayside in phase two and phase three. They don't really have a system to keep in contact with their prospects during the days, weeks, months, years, however long it takes for them to collect the money or free up their schedule or whatever it takes to make them able to make that commitment to your flight school. And then phase three is important because most Um, Most folks uh, or most companies in aviation get a lot of their business from recaptures and referrals, so that's really important as well. I'm going to tell a story about two different flight schools. One of them uses a marketing funnel that looks like this. It's very, very wide at the top and very, very narrow in your phase two and phase three. As opposed to this, we like to have our customers spend 50% of their marketing time and money on phase one and then save the other 50% for phase two and phase three. And what that does is it may make a narrower funnel at the top, but it leaves a wider pipeline in phase two and phase three, and that adds up to more sales coming out of the bottom of this thing, we found in our experience. So the way that you do that, the way that you keep in contact with people, you can't contact people 12 times saying, are you ready to enroll in our flight school? Are you ready to enroll in our flight school? Are you ready to enroll in our flight school? You always have to have something new to say. You always have to have great content, great stories to tell, great events to tell about, great pictures, videos, all of those things. And every company has a lot of great stories. It's just a matter of telling those stories in the best possible way. And that content or those stories build relationships, and relationships lead to sales. So when you tell somebody a story about, they ask a question and you tell them a story. Well, we had one student that came through here who had a similar concern, and here's what his experience was. Whether you do that as a blog article or whether you do that as a telephone conversation, that helps foster that relationship with that student, and he sees, okay, somebody else had a situation similar to mine, and they feel more comfortable making that purchase. So great content that your prospects value, and here are some things that you can include in your marketing. You can include tutorials, you can include humor, great stories about people at your airport or on your airfield, or people that use your airplanes, or your aircraft owners, or your other students. You can tell stories. You can put out some tutorials, some simple things like how do I get airport information. You can write great articles and have those picked up in your local media. And you can take video. Everybody has a cell phone these days that has, and most of them have the video camera capability on them. Most digital cameras can take a few minutes of video. So, take some video of takeoffs and landings, some things that get people excited. Take some video at your next open house or barbecue. Video your next speaker at your next fly-in. And get those videos out there. Those are really good marketing pieces. Another thing you want to do is grow a network of stakeholders. Not just prospective students, but you also want to get local reporters, parents, guidance counselors, and other people, anybody who influences the decisions of your prospective students. And you want to keep them in that loop where you're sending them emails, sending them printed newsletters, sending them information, and keeping that relationship warm and fuzzy, and making sure that those are good relationships. So now the first story I'm going to tell you is about Random Ray's flight school. Now Random Ray is not a real person, and he doesn't have a real flight school, but this is kind of a conglomeration of a lot of what we've seen in our consulting practice. Now Random Ray doesn't think a lot about sales and marketing until he is kind of in a corner. He runs into a situation where he doesn't have as many students on his schedule as he would like, and he recognizes that he's got to get some more in the door. So he will shell out some money on a phase one activity, like a radio remote. Is one of the things that he does. Usually he falls. Random Ray will fall victim to the next advertising salesperson that gives him a call and says, "Let's bring out our radio station and do a remote at your location, or let's do a Groupon, or let's buy a big ad in this magazine." So as a result, Random Ray has some events, barbecues and other kinds of things where he has a lot of people show up. Now, the problem with this is that he really hasn't spent a lot of time thinking through his phase two and phase three, where he is collecting lead information, qualifying these leads, and establishing a good follow-up and a good relationship with them where he's providing them with content. So the people that he meets at these events will hang around. They'll look at the airplanes, they'll eat the hamburgers, they will talk to the instructors possibly, and most of them are just after an afternoon of fun. Uh, a lot of them are not qualified as prospective students, and the ones that are qualified as prospective students may find the mayhem here a little too busy to actually get into an involved conversation with a flight instructor and really get their concerns addressed. So the problem with this approach, with Random Race Flight School and with this heavy phase one activity, is that it leads to a feast or famine, where they either have a lot of leads coming in the door or none. He's used up 90% of his marketing budget, so he can't really afford to do anything else for another 3 months, 6 months, however long it takes. He gets lots of unqualified leads, and he has little money left over for follow-up and referral programs. Now let's talk about another flight school. This is Systematic Sam. And again, he is not a real person, but Systematic Sam spends 50% of his marketing money on phase one and the other 50% on phase two and phase three. Now the difference here in Systematic Sam's flight school is that once somebody comes in the door to one of his events or answers one of his advertisements or something like that, it goes into this process where that person gets captured and they are fed a steady diet of weekly or monthly emails, printed newsletters, greeting cards, phone calls, and so on, to really warm up that relationship and to get that person's questions answered and to keep that relationship going. So, since he doesn't have a whole lot of money, Systematic Sam's phase one activities look a little bit different. Rather than having a big Groupon or a big radio remote, he might offer an ebook or information package on his website that is like a career guide for future captains and first officers. And that information package is downloaded by people who are more qualified maybe than the people who are going to just show up on an afternoon for a barbecue or for an event or for a radio remote. So once people download this ebook, he has their information. He can ask some questions on that form on his website where they download that information, and then he knows, maybe this person has had some flight training before. Maybe this person is interested in a career, and he has some information, so he feels a little bit more comfortable picking up the phone and talking to this person and establishing that relationship. Another thing that Systematic Sam is doing is he is connecting with folks, with prospective students, with reporters, with parents, with guidance counselors, and others on message boards, forums, membership sites like NBAA or AOPA or EAA, and other kinds of things. He is connecting with his prospective students on Facebook so that they can see who else goes to his flight school that they may know. And he's using follower lists and other things on Twitter and LinkedIn. So, these are ways that he's not spending a lot of money, but he's using that phase two uh, relationship building to use some of the social media tools to build those relationships. In phase three, Systematic Sam has a organized referral program where if a student or a prospective student brings a friend, they both get a t-shirt, or something along those lines so that everybody gets recognized for bringing referrals, and he's got a formal program for that. So, the difference between Systematic Sam and Random Ray, hopefully you can see, the difference that makes Systematic Sam so much more successful is that he's coordinated all of his marketing efforts into a system that has a phase one, a phase two, and phase three. He's spending 50% of his marketing budget on phases two and three. He is at the right place at the right time by using those social media and other kinds of things. He is useful by making sure that he is um, giving useful information, stories that people can use. That ebook that is a career guide for captains and first officers. He's memorable by using consistent branding, using a logo and colors and things like that. And he has an outstanding tagline or elevator speech, which really differentiates between Systematic Sam and the other opportunities in his market. So we have some handout materials that you can download from our website. Please do that, and do remember to get in touch with us. Um, when you download those materials, you will receive our ebook, and you'll also get our newsletter. And what I'd recommend that you do as a next step is to get our flight school sales and marketing report card. Now, that's a really good opportunity for you to see how you stack up uh, using some of these best practices and some of these proven techniques that we know work in the aviation industry and in the flight school industry. So we look forward to talking with you, and thank you for spending a little bit of time with us today.